La, la, la. The tune drifted lazily through the small diner as Darlene leaned against the counter, half focused on the rhythm of her own humming and half aware of the quiet lull between the lunch rush and the evening crowd. The bell above the door chimed, and she glanced up, her expression shifting as she spotted a familiar figure walking in with the kind of confidence that suggested trouble wrapped in charm. "Oh, Becky," Darlene said, straightening slightly. "Perfect timing. I'm on break." Becky smiled, already scanning the room before her eyes landed on the man beside Darlene. "So this is him," she said, folding her arms with theatrical seriousness. "Ben." "Right." Ben nodded politely. "Nice to finally meet you." Becky tilted her head, studying him with exaggerated curiosity. "So what do you see in her?" Ben blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me." Darlene groaned softly. "Here we go. As the first member of this family to meet you," Becky continued, completely undeterred, "I feel a certain obligation to ask the hard questions. Are you serious about her? Or is this just about the disappointing romance?" "Becky," Darlene warned. Ben shifted awkwardly. "That's wildly inappropriate." Darlene crossed her arms. "For the record, it is not disappointing. He is a middle-aged man doing the best that he can." Becky smirked. "Good. Then the gloves are off." Ben raised an eyebrow. "All right. Let's do this." Darlene shot him a look. "Don't encourage her." "Darlene won't commit," Ben said calmly, "because she is afraid to be vulnerable." Becky clapped once. "Now we are getting somewhere." Darlene leaned forward. "My turn. I am afraid to be vulnerable because he is too old to have never been married. And I think there might be something broken in there." Ben straightened. "Who says I have never been married?" Darlene paused. "You barely let me know your last name." "Exactly," Ben replied. "You barely know me." The tension hung for a moment before Becky broke into a grin. "I like him." Outside, the world moved on as if nothing unusual had happened. But inside the diner, something subtle had shifted. Not a resolution, not even understanding, but the beginning of honesty. Awkward and unpolished as it was. Later that afternoon, Dan stood near the counter, holding a bag of takeout like it was part of a ritual he had performed 1,000 times before. Louise approached him with an easy familiarity, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Dan," she said warmly, "I finally remembered that band I was telling you about." Dan looked up. "Yeah. Baby Huey and the Babysitters," she said, clearly pleased with herself. "Messing with the kid." Dan chuckled. "You can call it what you want, but I call it messing with the kid." Louise leaned in slightly. "Did you ever actually see them live?" Dan scratched his chin. "Not exactly. I got to Chicago once. Saw them from the edge of the stage. Then I got thrown out." Louise laughed. "That sounds about right." They fell into an easy rhythm of shared memories. The kind that made time feel less like something lost and more like something that had quietly shaped who they had become. Meanwhile, at home, chaos arrived in the form of a police officer at the door. "Is Harris here?" he asked. Darlene's expression tightened. "Why?" "She left something in my squad car," he said carefully. "I caught her in the woods last night. Drinking." Silence followed, heavy and immediate. Darlene forced a smile. "Thank you for bringing her home safe." After he left, she turned slowly, already preparing herself for the conversation that would follow. Harris sat on the couch later, defiant but not entirely unafraid. Darlene paced in front of her. "You were drinking," Darlene said. "It was just a couple of beers," Harris replied. "You are underage," Darlene shot back. "That is not optional." Harris rolled her eyes. "I get good grades. I am not ruining my life." Darlene stopped pacing. "That is how it starts. Small decisions. Wrong direction." There was frustration on both sides. But underneath it, something quieter lived. Fear. Concern. Love that did not always know how to speak gently. Later that night, Jackie found Harris alone and approached her with a different tone. I am not happy you were drinking, Jackie said, sitting beside her. But I do not want you getting caught because your friends are idiots. Harris blinked. You are helping me? Do not get used to it, Jackie replied. This is a one-time pass. For the first time that day, Harris smiled. Elsewhere in the house, a different kind of conflict unfolded. Becky stood in the kitchen, holding a rock in one hand and a vegetable in the other, looking like she had just lost an argument with history itself. I am cutting vegetables with a rock, she said flatly. Peter, completely absorbed in his academic enthusiasm, nodded. It is important for authenticity. Becky stared at him. You bought a fish from a market. I bartered, he corrected. With coins, she said. Future coins, he clarified. Becky sighed deeply. I need a break from authenticity. The absurdity of it all hung in the air. Ridiculous and oddly comforting. Back at the diner, Dan and Louise prepared to leave for the concert. There was a quiet anticipation between them. Something unspoken but not unnoticed. Louise hesitated. Can we sit for a minute? Dan nodded. I need to ask you something, she said. Do you think there could be something more between us? Dan took a breath. I like you. I really do. But I am not ready, he said honestly. My heart is still somewhere else. Louise nodded slowly. Fair enough. There was no anger. Only understanding. Sometimes, timing mattered more than intention. As the night stretched on, the family slowly found their way back to one another. Through arguments, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection, Darlene and Becky eventually stood side by side. The tension between them softened by shared history. We are a mess, Becky said. Always have been, Darlene replied. Becky smiled. But we show up. Darlene nodded. That counts. In the end, nothing was perfectly resolved. Relationships remained complicated. Emotions remained layered. And life continued to move forward in its imperfect, unpredictable way. But there was something steady beneath it all. They argued. They misunderstood. They stumbled. And still, they stayed. And sometimes, that was enough. La, la, la. The soft hum drifted through the air like a thread of calm woven into an otherwise ordinary afternoon, and Darlene barely noticed she was doing it until the door opened and the rhythm of the diner shifted just enough to pull her attention back into the present moment, where life never paused long enough for reflection but somehow always found time for complication, especially when family was involved, which it almost always was. And as she turned her head, she saw Becky walking in with that unmistakable energy that meant something was about to happen. Something inconvenient, something revealing, something that would inevitably leave emotional fingerprints on everyone involved. Oh, Becky, Darlene said, her voice carrying a mix of relief and resignation. This is Ben. Ben. My sister Becky. Ben nodded politely, offering a small, measured smile. The kind that suggested he was prepared for many things, but not quite everything. Oh, Becky said, stepping closer, her eyes scanning him with a curiosity that was almost clinical. Perfect. I am on break. So nice to finally meet you, she continued, not waiting for a response before diving straight into territory that most people would approach with caution. But Becky had never been most people. So what do you see in her? Ben blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me. Darlene closed her eyes briefly, already bracing for impact. As the first person in the family to finally meet you, Becky went on. Completely committed now. I feel a certain obligation to grill you and make you feel uncomfortable. So, are you serious about her? Or is it just about the disappointing romance? Ben shifted his weight. That was wildly inappropriate. Darlene crossed her arms, her tone flat but sharp. The romance is not disappointing. He is a middle-aged man doing the best that he can. Becky nodded slowly. Okay, I get it. There was a pause, brief but loaded. And then she smiled in a way that suggested escalation rather than retreat. The gloves are off, she said. All right, let us do this. Ben inhaled, then surprised himself by leaning in rather than stepping back. Darlene will not commit to being serious because she is afraid to be vulnerable. Darlene's eyes snapped open. And you seem like a lunatic. My turn, she added quickly. My turn. I am afraid to be vulnerable because he is too old to have never been married. And I think there is something broken inside there. Ben straightened. Who says I am not married? You barely know me, he added calmly. Darlene stared at him. Let us go. The tension cracked just enough for Becky to grin, delighted by the collision of honesty and chaos. Outside, life continued, unaware of the emotional negotiations happening inside a small diner in a town that had seen more than its share of ordinary days that quietly shaped extraordinary bonds. Later, Dan stood with a bag of food in his hand, the familiar weight grounding him in routine, when Louise approached, carrying with her a memory that had clearly refused to be forgotten. Hey, Dan, she said. Hey, Louise. Remember when we were talking about your band and I could not remember the name of that group I used to like? She asked. I found them. Dan raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah. Baby Huey and the Babysitters, she said with satisfaction. Messing with the kid. Dan smiled. A real one this time. You can call it what you want. But I call it messing with the kid. She laughed. And for a moment, the years between then and now folded in on themselves, leaving just two people sharing a memory that still carried warmth. You know, Dan said, right when I left Lanford, I got to Chicago. I sat in with them. Louise widened her eyes. No. Oh yeah, he said. Then they looked over. Saw me sitting on the edge of the stage. And I got thrown out. She laughed again. Softer this time. It is so nice to have you back. I remember you packing your drums in the back of your car after graduation, she added. Heading out to Chicago with your band. Dan nodded. That was the beginning of the long, slow climb to the bottom. I was jealous of you, Louise admitted. I still kick myself for not taking my guitar and hitting the road like you did. Do not beat yourself up, Dan said. You were terrible. She laughed. I am okay with that. I am kind of the Jimmy Page of drywall, he added. The conversation drifted naturally, easy and unforced, like something that had been waiting patiently for years to continue. Meanwhile, back at the house, the quiet was broken by a knock at the door that carried with it a different kind of story. Is Harris here? The officer asked. No, Darlene said slowly. She is in school. Is something wrong? She left this in my squad car, he replied. I caught her in the woods last night. Drinking. The words landed heavily. Not because they were shocking, but because they confirmed something Darlene had hoped was not happening yet. What? She said. I just wanted to make sure she got home safe, he added. Thank you, Darlene replied. Her voice controlled. After he left, the air inside the house shifted, tension settling into every corner. When Harris returned, the conversation began almost immediately. What happened? Darlene asked. I was with friends, Harris said. You were drinking, Darlene said. It was not a big deal, Harris replied. You are underage, Darlene said firmly. You cannot have any drinks. Harris rolled her eyes. I am getting good grades. I am doing well. It is not like I am ruining my life. Darlene shook her head. That is how it starts. Small decisions. Wrong direction. The argument moved in circles, each side convinced of its own logic, neither fully hearing the fear beneath the other's words. Later, Jackie sat beside Harris, her tone softer, more conspiratorial. I am not happy that you were drinking, she said. But I do not want you getting caught because your friends are not thinking clearly. Harris blinked. You are helping me? I am being realistic, Jackie said. This is your one pass. Harris smiled. Just a little. Elsewhere, Becky stood in the kitchen, holding a rock and a vegetable, her expression somewhere between disbelief and exhaustion. "I am cutting vegetables with a rock," she said. Peter nodded enthusiastically. "It is important for authenticity." "You bought a fish," she said. "I bartered for it," he replied. "With coins," she said. "Future coins," he corrected. Becky sighed. "I need a break from authenticity." The absurdity of the situation hung in the air. Ridiculous, but strangely grounding. Back at the diner, Dan and Louise prepared to leave for the concert. The anticipation mixed with something quieter. Something unspoken. "Can we sit for a minute?" Louise asked. Dan nodded. "This might sound strange," she said. "But Becky and Jackie think you might be interested in me." Dan hesitated. "Are you serious?" "I mean," she said, "I cannot believe you did not notice. Every time you walk in, I look at you like you are something I have been waiting for." Dan took a breath. "I like you. I really do." "But," she asked gently. "But I am not ready," he said. "My heart is still with my wife." Louise nodded slowly. "I understand." There was no anger. Only acceptance. And maybe a little disappointment. But even that was softened by respect. "We can still go to the concert," she said. "Of course," Dan replied. They smiled. A quiet agreement forming between them. Later that night, Darlene and Becky found themselves talking. Not as opponents. Not as critics. But as sisters who had lived enough life to understand that perfection was never the goal. "We are a mess," Becky said. "We always have been," Darlene replied. "But we show up," Becky added. Darlene nodded. "And that matters." The house settled into a quieter rhythm. Each person carrying their own thoughts. Their own lessons. Their own small victories. Nothing had been solved completely. No one had changed overnight. But something had shifted. Understanding had moved a little closer. Patience had grown a little stronger. And beneath it all, the thing that held them together remained steady. Not perfection. Not agreement. But the simple, persistent choice to stay. To care. And to keep trying. Even when it was difficult. Even when it was messy. Even when it felt like they were still figuring it out one conversation at a time.